I wanted to call this one Meditate to Lose Weight, just to cause a little bit of controversy. Quite a while ago, we used to have this amazing yoga instructor at the room. We still have amazing yoga instructors. That's not what I'm trying to say, but we used to have a lady called Kat that I was very connected to. We all know how much yoga I like to do, and Kat was one of those people that always kind of respected the fact that I just found it difficult to do yoga. And the couple of classes that I did do with her, she was really amazing. She was just one of those people that had a lot of compassion. Now, a lot of you probably know that I used to take care of a lot of the social media stuff that went out. And when you do social media stuff, you have to use hashtagging, right? So I had advertised one of her special classes with the hashtag weight loss and the hashtag fat loss once. And she sent me a message expressing her concerns about the fact that I was advertising a yoga and meditation class to be weight loss, and she didn't quite agree with me. And so she and I got together for a coffee because I wanted to actually share with her the things that I'm going to share with you guys today as well, and how there is a direct link between the two. If stress is a big factor in your life, and I think for a lot of us, and especially during COVID times, stress has been a very big factor. So that is really the premise of what this presentation is about. So stress can be one of the real reasons that we are doing everything that we are supposed to do, but we don't get any results, simply because of a lot of factors that stress cause in our body that make it difficult for the body to function properly, in terms of metabolism, in terms of immune system, in terms of day-to-day functioning. So it's really important to keep this in mind, because there was a couple of weeks ago when I did my talk about the blue zones, and Pete and I always have a meeting directly after this seminar, and he said to me, so basically what you're saying is that diet and exercise have an impact, but it's not really a huge impact on health. There's loads of other things that contribute as well. And that is very, very true. So it seems a little bit counterintuitive to only be focusing on diet and exercise when health is so much more than that. So let's have a little bit of a look at the physiology of stress. So we have our autonomic nervous system, and our autonomic nervous system is responsible for the sense of homeostasis that we have in our body. It is responsible for letting your heart beat, for hormone release, digestion, all of the physical stuff that your body does without thinking about it. So it's on autopilot, that kind of thing. You don't think about making your heart beat, and you don't think about taking breaths, although you can think about taking breaths. But this is all controlled by your autonomic nervous system, and it sets into effect a cascade of things every time it is stimulated. So we have these two nervous system states that our body can be in. And of course, we've talked a lot about sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system states. And this is the reason that you can have real health problems, even though you're doing, or what you think you're doing is all the right stuff. So let's talk about the reason that we have stress. Now, stress is actually something that should, in a normal state, help your body. we have these two system states. Parasympathetic nervous system state is what's called fight or flight. And if we take it back to caveman times, this was what kept you safe if a bear jumped out of the woods at you, right? It put your body in a state where it could run if it needed to. Or if there was an attack from another tribe, it made it so that your body was in the best state to fight. And let's talk about some of the things that happen when the parasympathetic nervous system state is activated. So you get things happening like the blood goes to the muscles so that you can either run or you can stand and fight, right? The blood goes to where it's going to be needed. So where you're going to need oxygen to be able to fight or run. The pupils dilate so that you're letting more light in so that you can see better, because obviously if you have to fight, you need to be able to see properly. You get, your heart starts beating faster. Your digestion stops because you don't need that right then. You want to put all of the body's circulation into the places where it's going to need it, which is the muscles, the skeletal muscles. So that is what stress is. It's putting you into a state where you can survive. Now, conversely, the sympathetic nervous system, I've said it the wrong way around. The sympathetic nervous system state is fight or flight, and parasympathetic is when you're resting and digesting. So then all of the body's systems turn to being more relaxed. The circulation of the body goes to the internal organs where it's needed for digestion and for repair of muscles and that kind of thing. And, like your pupils contract, you feel more relaxed. So it's important to realize that stress is there for a reason, but we are overstressed. We stimulate the sympathetic nervous system so much these days with things that happen in our lives and, even the world state at the moment. But things like, even your mobile phone little flashy light causes a little bit of a sympathetic nervous system response every time it flashes and you notice that it's there, right? So everything that we do these days pushes our body into the sympathetic nervous system state. So what happens? Well, the way that your pupils contract and your heart starts to beat faster is by hormones, right? Your autonomic nervous system, the base of your brain tells your body, okay, we're going to go into a stress state now, and releases hormones. Now, one of the major hormones that we secrete when it comes to a stressed state is cortisol, right? You guys have all heard of cortisol. And cortisol is responsible for accelerating the heart rate, for making the body ready to go. Now, when we're talking about energy production, and we've talked about energy production a lot over the past weeks, right? We have two options. We have the glycogen that's in our muscles, the quick carbohydrate that the body can grab and go with. And then we have our fat reserves, which is what we dip into once our blood sugar is depleted. Now, the body prefers blood sugar and glycogen, right? Because it's much quicker. It doesn't have to break anything down. So when we are in a sympathetic nervous system state, all of the body's systems are geared to burning glycogen. And cortisol actually switches off fat burning ability. So that is why a lot of people will experience, if they're highly, highly stressed out, they can experience things like blood sugar level dips and troughs, right? Because their body is blocking the burning of fat. So it can only produce energy from either stored muscle glycogen, and once that runs out, you have to eat again to get that energy back. So that is why you can sometimes experience, I don't know, tell me if you've experienced this. You've gone to do a high intensity interval training workout. You know, you smash yourself in a Tabata session. When you come out, you have that burning sensation in your chest, you know, because you really pushed your body through. And for the next half hour to 45 minutes, you don't feel hungry at all. But a little bit later, suddenly your stomach just goes, wow, you know, like growl. And suddenly you just feel this insane need to eat jelly babies or cake or something like that, because your blood sugar levels have dropped because you cannot access fat stores for ongoing energy. So this can be, and cortisol blocking the burning of fat can be sometimes where we fall down. So no matter how much exercise or how well we eat, we just cannot get into our fat reserves because cortisol is blocking that. So that can be sometimes where we really lose out. Now let's have a look at cortisol. So cortisol is responsible for a lot of things, and let's not say that cortisol is a bad thing. No, we need cortisol. Cortisol is what wakes you up in the morning, right? Otherwise, you would just stay asleep all day. It can also work for reducing inflammation as well. And it can also control blood pressure, because obviously, you know, when your body goes into a stressed state, things need to happen to your blood pressure to be able to ready it for action. The problem is these days that we have lots of little stress reactions, but there is no need for action. And that's also because we don't have as natural a way of living anymore as back in caveman times, right? In caveman times, you'd get up when the sun come up, and then you'd go to bed when the sun went down because there was no electricity. You know, our body's biorhythms are aligned with you know, daylight and nighttime, and all of those things should actually really be in sync. We should really get up when the sun comes up, and we should really go to bed when the sun goes down, and we should have our bare feet on the ground, you know, getting the energy out of the soil. And, you know, we've talked a lot about doing things like grounding, putting your feet in the sand or putting your feet in the grass or in the dirt to really regulate your body's rhythms, because what it does is it pops your body back into a parasympathetic nervous system state rather than being in a sympathetic nervous system state. And all of these things, like we would have just walked on bare feet on the ground, we would have just always been in sync with the seasons, with day and night. And all of those things go to bring us back into a rest and digest phase. But these days, everything is stressful, right? From getting out into traffic here, right? to, you know, to the phone constantly flashing, beeping and buzzing, going, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? Oh, what's that, right? We never really get into a fully relaxed state anymore. And even when we're asleep, we don't have that fully relaxed state anymore. Now, cortisol will also play a role in not only the storage of body fat and the burning of carbohydrate, but also with hunger hormones. And hunger hormones is what is released when the body runs out of blood sugar, right? Even though we have lots of storage to be able to generate more energy, if we can't access that energy, then the body is going to need to find energy somewhere else. And the way that the body signals to you that you need to put more energy in is by activating hunger hormones. So a stressed state will definitely put you in a state where there will be more activation of hunger hormones and more, the body will ask for more food, even though it has plenty of storage to be able to function properly. Cortisol as well. Cortisol levels rise as dawn comes or when you're about to wake up, and then cortisol should peak and then trough towards the end of the day. And as cortisol comes down, then you should be starting to feel sleepy and get you into a ready for bed state. Now, if you keep on generating more and more cortisol, then you're not going to be able to get into that sleepy state. And even though you might physically be very tired, cortisol won't let you sleep because it's still keeping you up, awake and alert, because maybe a bear's going to jump out of the woods, right? Yeah, so we really need to be very aware of that when we talk about stress and stress hormone. So what else might be hampering your progress? Well, increased fatigue means that your motivation is zapped, right? We all know that you need energy to have motivation. Longer recovery time after your workouts, that can also be a sign that you're constantly in this stressed out state, that there's too much activation of cortisol. Emotional instability, because, you know, feeling hangry, feeling upset when you can't eat. And this is something that definitely has affected me in the past as well. You know, when we're overtired, when we're overtrained, we can definitely feel a little bit weepy and a little bit not ourselves. Craving for sugar, that's a massive, that's a massive red flag when it comes to being overstimulated by stress hormones, difficulty sleeping, a higher resting heart rate. And you'll notice that all of these things are also the same symptoms as what you get with overtraining. Inability to lose weight even though you're working out hard, and an accumulation of body fat, of belly fat. And then there are other signs as well, like not being able to heal properly. You know, if you have little cuts and nicks and grazes, that they take a longer time to actually heal. And also a lot of brain fog, not being able to think properly, feeling confused sometimes, or not knowing where you are in space. So that's to do with your proprioception as well. So these can be signs. Of course, they can also be signs of other things as well, but it's something to keep in mind when it comes to stress. Okay, now we all know that sleep is one of the main times of the day where our body can go through rest and recovery protocols. We can also feel that if we don't get enough sleep, that everything kind of gets out of control. Now, let me just have a little bit of a show of hands. Who's a good sleeper? And who can have problems sometimes? Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it's very common for people to have really disturbed sleep because of raised levels of cortisol, especially not being able to get to sleep and waking up really, really early. That can be signs of an elevated stress response. So something to really think about, because obviously there's a lot of things that can be caused by sleep deprivation as well. And in terms of mental health, it's really important to make sure that you get enough rest and repair. Caffeine cravings, of course. And, you know, caffeine is one of those things that we tend to have a lot of when we haven't slept properly. But caffeine as well, especially in women, can really initiate a big stress response as well. So then you're loading cortisol on top of more stress. Because stress doesn't have to come from just mental stress, right? Physical stress, like workouts, like drinking caffeine, like eating food that has additives in it that are difficult for your body to digest, that's also stress on your body. Consuming foods with chemicals on it, consuming pesticides, all of that is stressful to your body as well. And all of this will contribute to chronic inflammation. So lots of different pathologies are caused by chronic inflammation, and these are just some of them. So in terms of your brain, migraine, autism, insomnia, depression, dementia, bipolar disorder, brain cancer, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, MS, ALS, OCD, all of these things can be caused by chronic inflammation. And then, you've got heart attack and all of the cardiovascular problems that you can get, problems with your kidneys, problems with your skin, lots of multi-organ diseases as well. And then, of course, you've got your joint diseases too, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, and then, psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis as well. And then immune system problems, because cortisol will also depress your immune system. And that's where you can really become susceptible to things like COVID-19. It's definitely something that we need to look after ourselves so that we don't put ourselves in danger of a lot of other things. And then, when you're talking about blood vessels, one of the main red flags that you have a lot of chronic inflammation going on could be a buildup of cholesterol plaques in the blood vessels. Now, that could be caused by something which is maybe a mental stress as well. Cholesterol is it's an indicator of chronic stress and chronic inflammation in the body. It's not that because you ate too much cheese or because you ate too much bacon, right? It is because you have heightened levels of inflammation in the body. That is why you have increased cholesterol and cholesterol plaques. And then, of course, people find this really surprising, but even, asthma and allergies, that can also be all stress related too, in terms of chronic inflammation. Then, of course, eyes in terms of macular degeneration, their retinal degeneration as well. It's important to remember that chronic inflammation is the cause of so many diseases, and that you actually have it in your hands to be able to reduce chronic inflammation. We all feel safer when we can kind of blame it on genetics, or we can blame it on things that are outside of our hands. But unfortunately, the truth is that all of this is actually within your own hands. Yes, there are genetic factors that can predispose you to certain factors, but it takes genetics plus a lifestyle that is not optimal to actually bring these problems to the forefront. And it's a signal that there is something wrong with the body, and that something needs to change. So let's talk about natural ways to lower cortisol, and natural ways that we can stop our bodies getting into this absolute state of chronic inflammation. Now, obviously, removing yourself from stressful situations is not always possible. But we can as much as possible. This morning, I taught a journey ride about, the simple things, and how sometimes we completely miss the simple things because we are so wound up in situations where we're completely just thinking with our minds, and we're not stopping and checking in with ourselves and feeling what the actual situation is. Sometimes, and I know that I can suffer from migraines sometimes, and a migraine for me is a huge trigger. Usually I don't even know that I'm stressed, and I'll get a migraine, and then I'll start thinking, well, why am I getting a migraine? And then I'll realize that it was something that was really bothering me. I didn't think it was bothering me, but obviously it was bothering me. And migraines have always been that to me. I thought that I was fine, but I'd get a migraine and then I would know, oh, actually, I'm not okay. That situation that I thought was okay is actually not okay. So identifying the areas of your life that are producing stress and thinking about ways that you can address that stress. I mean, it's obvious, right? You kind of think, well, duh, you know, but we don't actually do it. We kind of let it sit because we're busy with other stuff, right? And then before you know it, it's completely built up and it's out of control. So stopping, thinking, identifying, and then dealing with it. But even sometimes just identifying can be enough to release stress, because then at least you're aware of it. It's not creeping up on you. It's not niggling at you without you knowing what it is. When you know what it is, when you can name it, when you can identify it, it's much more manageable. So let's move on to the next one, eating a good diet, because, you know, I just said to you guys as well that you can get stress from having, you know, things in your diet that are difficult for your body to deal with. You know, for example, you know, pesticides and things that are maybe difficult to process in your body. Your body has no reference for how to deal with these things, because if you think about it, you know, pesticides have only been in our diet for the past 70 years, something like that. It's something completely new, and the body doesn't know what to do with it when it's ingested. And yes, we have a detoxification system, but it's still extra load on top of that detoxification system. We don't live nearly as cleanly as where our bodies developed, you know, from an evolutionary sense. If you go back to caveman times, pollution was, you know, because there was a fire nearby and the smoke was in the air. But for the rest, you know, we didn't have any of this air pollution, any of this water pollution that we have these days. Even just the living situation and having, you know, all these cars around breathing in carbon monoxide and all the other gases, that is stressful on your body. It has to deal with that. You know, and I see Cecile sitting there in that beautiful clean air, and, you know, I can feel that in my lungs, right? And I can already feel that extra level of energy that you have when the air is much cleaner. Yeah, I know, I'm getting so jealous right now, Cecile. But yeah, I mean, you know the feeling. You fly into Abu Dhabi after having been away somewhere where the air is a little bit different. And after 3 days, you can feel that you have this natural power down, because already your body is busy with a lot of other processes in terms of detoxification. So what can we do? Well, obviously eating a whole foods diet and eating a diet that we were designed to eat. So eating the foods that, you know, that we've been eating for thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, rather than these foods that we've just invented, like Twinkies, Oreos, that kind of thing over the last 30, 40 years, right? This is not what our bodies were designed to eat. Our bodies were designed to eat the food that is available in nature and not produced in a factory. Yes, we need to make sure that we're dealing with, you know, and we've talked a lot about, okay, we should be eating foods that help the body deal with toxins. So of course, you know, like probiotics, because our gut bacteria really help in regulating our food. Antioxidant rich foods, making sure that you have some turmeric latte in your life, right, Pete? Because he loves his turmeric lattes. Luckily, you can get it in a capsule, or you can even put it in your food. It's not that bad. Dark chocolate, that always puts a smile on people's faces. Coffee actually is an antioxidant as well. Red wine, we know, has high levels of antioxidants in it, especially the ones called resveratrol, which you can also take as a supplement. And foods that feed our gut bacteria, as well as foods that put new gut bacteria in our bodies as well. But we've talked a lot about nutrition, and it's not the only factor for reducing inflammation. We talk a lot about nutrition, so I want to go on to the next point, because there are a lot of foods that do decrease inflammation, but the key is to eat as naturally as possible. The key is to stay away from unnatural foods, and that's like step one. Over-processed foods, white flour, white rice, all of the kind of foods that have had a lot of processing to them. That is not what's going to look after you. Foods rich in omega-3s, we talk about those all the time, and then also the foods that are high in the antioxidants. Okay, sleeping well, obviously, since we were just talking about that. But one thing leads to the other, right? Elevated cortisol leads you to sleep badly, and sleeping badly elevates cortisol. So it's kind of like, a circle that we really need to deal with. So what are the things that we can do to ensure that we sleep well? Well, the number one thing would be to counteract the production of cortisol, which would mean by taking charge and trying to get our bodies into a parasympathetic nervous system state. Now, there's a number of ways that we can do that, but having a sleep ritual is one of those things, because it signals to the brain that, okay, these are the 3-4 steps that I take to do before I go to bed. Because, we're all about routine, right? Our bodies like routine. So it can be something like taking a shower or taking a bath. The hot water can really relax you. It can be about having a cup of herbal tea, obviously caffeine-free, something that doesn't stimulate, but having that cup of tea before you go to bed can be a signal to your body, okay, as soon as I have this warm cup of tea, then I'm starting to gear down. And obviously reducing your screen time. You don't want to spend the last hour before you go to bed doing work in front of a computer or constantly flicking on your phone. I know I'm definitely one of those that can do a lot of that, or watching TV as well. And that's because of the light waves that can go in your eyes, and they can cause a stress reaction as well. So all of these things that we can do to kind of get a sleep routine going. Relaxation techniques, and this is the key to getting into a parasympathetic nervous system state. So meditation, definitely, it's not for everyone. It really isn't for everyone, and a lot of people think that meditation is about thinking nothing, and it's not about thinking nothing at all. It's just about being in the present moment without reacting to a lot of stuff. So there's, and it seems counterintuitive, but there are apps on the phone that will help you with being able to do meditation. And I'll definitely be leading a spin and meditation, I think, next weekend. So if you've never tried meditation before, you can come and do it with me. Don't worry, I'm not an expert at meditation, but utilizing the breath and utilizing some other techniques, we can activate a parasympathetic nervous system state, which is really what we're looking for. Deep breathing is actually the key to being able to activate the parasympathetic nervous system state. So breathing techniques can be something that's really cool to learn. And of course, we once did a seminar or a little workshop on breathing techniques. Maybe we can do that one again soon. Yoga and Pilates, simply because they are exercises where you do focus on the breath. The breath is central to both yoga and Pilates. And then, of course, in Spinning Journey, we also utilize breathing techniques as well. So, that can also be, these breathing techniques can be brought into exercise as well. It's not necessarily just something that you can do when you're doing something that isn't very strenuous. You can do it whilst running, you can do it whilst cycling, you can do it whilst walking. Being in nature, of course, like I explained before, getting your feet in the ground, getting your feet in the sand, getting your feet in the water is a way of connecting to the energy of the earth, and that will also switch your body from a sympathetic nervous system state to a parasympathetic nervous system state. And then, of course, mindfulness, being in the moment without engaging in worrying about the future or thinking about the past, because those things have no, how do you say that? They have no purpose in the moment. In the moment, you're in the moment. And that's a very relaxed state. And once again, it will bring you into a parasympathetic nervous system state as well. Now, relaxation is one thing, but also happiness is another thing that brings us into a parasympathetic nervous system state, feeling good. And the next few things are about creating happiness and feeling good. So taking up a hobby. Studies have been shown that when we're engaged in a hobby, we're actually much more relaxed and we go into a parasympathetic nervous system state. So, things like puzzling. I know Becca was doing a lot of puzzling at one stage, and also Lego. She was building, what were you building? A bus, I think, right? That was really cool. Yeah. So stuff where you are concentrating on doing something, a lot of the times with your hands, that can be something that that really takes you out of the past and the future and puts you in the now. So hobbies can be something that can be really helpful in terms of bringing people into the present moment. Laughing and having fun. I mean, it's like duh, right? But sometimes I realize I've gone for weeks without having a really good belly laugh. When you laugh until you cry and your sides hurt and you've got like tears coming out the sides of your eyes. When was the last time that you did that? Yeah, exactly, right? So, yeah. And, there is a thing called laughter yoga, and it works really well in big groups of people because once one person starts laughing, it's infectious, right? It's like yawning. If one person starts to laugh like a crazy person, it makes everybody laugh, right? And they actually have therapeutic laughter yoga sessions where people just laugh. And, some people, Rebecca always says that I have a dirty laugh, right? So you're like, focus on something like that. And now everyone's going to try and make me laugh because they want to hear my dirty laugh. That wasn't it. No, that wasn't it. But yeah, cortisol levels decrease in response to laughter. So, I don't know whether you like Friends or whether you like Seinfeld or whether, there's a show that makes you laugh. But usually the best laughs you have around other people, connecting with other people, right? And when you can belly laugh together, you know that you have that bridge of connection. And a bridge of connection from a nervous system point of view, puts people into a parasympathetic nervous system state, right? Because then you know that that person from a primal level isn't an enemy. So you can relax. So that relaxes your cortisol as well. So that's why connection is so important too. Exercising. Well, you know, I don't think there's anyone here that has an issue with not doing enough exercise. So yeah, it is definitely a huge stress level reducer. Now, the type of exercise is also important because exercise at the same time as being relaxing can also be stressful. It's just that, and we do need to stress the body sometimes. It's a natural state that needs to happen. But when you're overstressed, then perhaps doing high intensity interval training all the time is going to be of detriment to your body rather than being of added value. And, you know, Peter, Rebecca, and I always talk about overtraining, always talk about the importance of doing a lot of less intense exercise, moderate intensity exercise, because here you don't trigger the amount of cortisol that you do in a high intensity exercise. And the benefits from moderate exercise are just as good as high intensity exercise. High intensity exercise needs to happen sometimes, but does not need to happen every day. Yes, yes. Now, I know quite a few people that can drink a cup of coffee and go to bed. My mum is one of them. You don't do it anymore? Oh, amazing. Okay. But I know lots of people, you know, at the end of the night, before you leave the dinner table or before you leave, you know, the table where you've been eating at a restaurant, you have an espresso, right, to get you home. I've never understood that because I'll be awake all night if I do that. But there's people that have like conditioned themselves and they're like, oh, it doesn't affect me. Well, you feel like it doesn't affect you, but it does actually affect you. It does increase your heart rate, increases your cortisol levels. So this can also be a reason why you wake up earlier in the morning, because you know your cortisol curve becomes less steep. So that means that you'll wake up earlier in the morning because you haven't had as restful night of sleep. So it's definitely a good time to switch to decaf, and everyone's personal tolerance level is different. For me, I need to stop drinking caffeine after 4 o'clock in the afternoon because otherwise I can get problems. Preferably after lunch should be my last coffee, and that's it. And I'm really working on reducing my amount of coffee at the moment. So yeah, that's a bit of a no-brainer when it comes to it. And then of course, having good relationships. And that's what I was just explaining to you. When you connect with someone, that activates your parasympathetic nervous system state because you do not see them as a threat. Because of course, you know, our nervous system goes back to prehistoric times, right? It is how our nervous system developed. It was like, okay, is that person, is that an enemy or is that a friend? Are they going to help me, you know, go further in life, or are they going to try and stop me going further in life? And that's the real primal, reactions that we have with people. So having good relationships and being connected to the people that are around you is important for stress levels. I mean, unhappy relationships, we all know how much stress that actually causes. So that has to be in our own hands, right? And sometimes that can be the hardest thing to actually stand up and face, is that, well, perhaps this relationship is not doing any good for me. And, you know, that obviously that's a very complicated subject, but it is very important to have good relationships, stable, loving relationships, being able to trust people, being able to fully connect with people that are around you. And then, of course, choices come with that too, right? You have to choose to surround yourself with that kind of people, or face consequences of higher stress levels. But yeah, this is something for you to mull over and have a think about. as well. I'm just going to do this one because I've probably taken this way out of context, but yeah, Laurent was having a go at me last night. He's like, you know, you really got to slow down. You've really got to stop pushing so hard all the time. He's like, because, you know, you'll also lose sight of your happiness at one point as well. But I was just like, you know, it makes me so happy to come home and have, you know, all these little furry faces looking at you going, yay, you're home. It's something that brings so much joy into my life as well. And definitely when I'm with my cats, I'm much less stressed. And I really feel that connection with these little furry bodies. So yeah, I mean, it's not for everyone, obviously, and none of these points are for everyone. They're all just things that you can think about in terms of, okay, well, this is how I can actively start reducing stress in my life.